Hello and welcome back to Grandpa's Garage. This is episode 3 and this one is going to be all about testing batteries. I've got a big Harley Davidson one here. I wouldn't be able to do this with a car one, as you probably know. So here we go, we're going to kick off on batteries. Well, how do you test a battery first of all, and what is a battery? And there are many questions. A battery is really a way of storing electricity inside a convenient container. They come in all kinds of different sizes. This one's what's called a lithium polymer battery, used for things like radio control. Your cell phone has a similar thing inside it, but usually about that big, tiny little ones. So basically a battery doesn't actually make electricity, it doesn't actually produce electricity. What it does do, however, is that it stores electricity. You have to think of it as being kind of a big bucket. This thing, when the battery is dead and nothing is coming out, think of it as being a bucket. The electricity would be about here, all the way at the bottom. But as you start to fill it up, gradually, it will store that electricity and then it's let out on one of these two posts. Kind of a cool mechanism really, and how you charge these things is just a very similar way to you would if you were filling a bucket of water. If you turn your battery charger on to full pelt, it's going to throw water in like a hose pipe on full bore, and most of the water would go into the bucket, but a lot would splash out around the edges. If you restrict the flow of it down from say 40 amps, which is the maximum on a battery charger, down to 10 amps, it's kind of like squeezing the faucet down a little bit and letting less water come in. It'll still fill up on a gradual, steady basis. It'll take a little longer, but none will splash and waste out of the edges. The smallest amount of electricity you can actually put into one of these from a battery charger is 2 amps. You need to have a little bit of time really to have it fill up and do that. If it's completely dead, it'll probably take most of the day to gradually fill it up, but you're assured that it is going to be completely full when you're done. So a battery does not make electricity. What it does is it stores it and discharges it. Now when a car starts up, it uses some of the power out of the battery. It'll come down to about 3/4. Because car batteries and motorcycle batteries are only really designed to give you 10, 12 sudden bursts of power to get your engine started. Now obviously every time you start it, it sucks some power out of it. So you have an alternator on the car, a charging system, that takes over as soon as the car starts up. And the alternator is designed to put out 14.5 volts, 14 and a half. Now you probably know that these batteries now are around about 12 volts. These new ones are around about 12.75. They're closer to 13 volts. So you're probably wondering at this point, why does the car's alternator or the charging system put out more power than the battery does? Well, everything on the car is pretty much electrical, and there's more of these electrical devices on cars now than there ever were. I think the new Corvette has something like 400 computers on board. Stupid, and they all have to boot up from a 12 volt battery. Isn't that just crazy? You'd think they probably want to make it a lot more voltage. Well, apparently those plans are in the works. Anyway, the alternator puts out 14.5 volts because everything on the car needs around about 12.5 volts to work. The extra volt goes back into the battery to top it off again and put back in while you're driving the car what you took out. So the battery's on a constant state of recharge while the engine's actually running. Kind of a clever idea. Now I'm going to show you one or two different tools to actually check the battery, and this is something you should probably do before the winter especially, because car batteries and motorcycle batteries have a tendency to not like the cold weather very much. Years ago when I was a kid, and that's a long time ago now, car batteries used to die gradually, you'd start to notice that it wasn't cranking the engine over quite so well, and that you'd charge it all up and it would crank it kind of slowly. Well, nowadays with the advent of these new style batteries, the sealed ones and the gel batteries as they call them, they tend to just suddenly go ping, we're not working anymore, we'll just lose a cell completely. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells. Now one of the questions I'm going to ask you, if this is a 12.75 volt battery, if it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells, how many volts comes out of one cell? So 12.75 divided by 6. See if you can figure that out. Okay, this little bit here is on tools. And this gadget here, and I like gadgets as you probably know, it's called a digital volt ohm meter, a DVOM. On the front of it here it actually says it's the 550 digital multimeter. It's made by a company called OTC. These ones were bought through, I believe, the auto parts store here in town. It's got a nice rubber outside, and it's made of kind of fairly hard plastic. And I think that we've had these, getting on for 10 years, and they've never gone wrong even once. So I think they're pretty reliable. These are around about $100 a piece. And I hear you're probably saying, well, I can go to Harbour Freight Tools and I can buy one for $2.99. Yes, you can, and they will measure car voltage, and they're kind of useful to have in your toolbox. But the problem with them is they're $2.99 tools, and for $2.99 that's exactly what you get quality wise. If you drop it, it will break. If you drive over it with a car, there will be nothing left. This particular one has been driven over by a car. Quite literally, it was left on our drive-on lift during last year, and it was holding the wheel. Somebody put it in as a wedge. You know how that is in the shop. Well, I drove over it, and it's not even marked. Pretty good little meter. It's got a number of different features on it, some of which we use and some of which we won't. There's a rotary switch here, which is what we use more than anything in automotive. The first click on these OTCs is volts DC. Now DC is direct current. That means that it's either switched off or it's switched on. And this is the kind of electricity that's stored inside the battery, DC. So the only thing we'd use on this would be the DC volts. And what I'll do with it, hopefully this can be seen okay. This is the digital volt ohm meter, OTC. You can see that I've got the red wire plugged into where it says volts. It also says capacitance. The other side is a black wire, and this says COM. It is actually the ground wire. Now most of you should know by now that for you to get electricity to do anything, you need power to come out of the positive terminal, which is this one, and go through your gadget, do what it's meant to do, like light a light bulb, and any power that's not used, think of it as being sent back to the negative terminal. Now we always have a black wire as ground on a car, always. The red wire always tells you that there's electron flow. It's hot, it will cause sparks, and it's red. Now why do you think this terminal is red? Okay, I'm sure some of you already know that it's the same colour as blood, and it's to give you a significance that it's actually a dangerous wire. Now I'm going to put the red one on the plus side of the battery. Plus means positive or hot. Red is hot, black is not. The other side of the battery is a negative, just the minus sign. So I'm going to put the red one on here and the black one on here. Hopefully you can see the meter. Now this one is actually kind of low. Don't know if you can read it. It's actually only got 9.18 volts in it. But this battery has been sitting around for quite a while. 12.75 volts is what it should have. And it's just showing around about 9.5 volts at the moment. So for me to do a further test on this battery, to test how strong the battery is holding the voltage and how many bursts it would put out, would be fairly pointless until I charge the battery. So that would be the next thing with this particular battery. I believe I have a car battery here, and I'll get that up here and we'll perform another test with another tool to test whether the battery is actually any good or not. Okay, we're now going to test this car battery. This is one that came from my beach buggy. So sure one or two of you have actually seen it. We're going to put the meter up against there and see if we can see what's coming in. This would be the ground wire, and this would be the hot one. We've got around about 11.45 volts in this. It's been sitting here since the start of Christmas time, and it really needs to be put on charge as well. I do know it to be a fairly good battery though. Really it should be fully charged. What I normally do with my meter when I've finished using it is switch it off, even though it does have an automatic cut off. After around about 10 or 15 seconds this thing will switch off. I always wrap my wires around it, then I'll lay it back in my toolbox. Now here's a second tool. This is called a Midtronics PBT100. And this is what's known as a voltage stroke drop tester. Now when we talk about a drop test on a battery, we're talking about a voltage and an amperage drop, not physically dropping the battery onto the floor. What I'm actually going to do with this gadget is I'm going to actually put this on here, and I'm going to put a load on the battery. A load would be considered trying to crank your engine over on one of the best Kansas mornings you can think of during the winter. The oil would be super thick and it would have to crank really hard to turn the engine over. So this puts a load on it and simulates those nasty cold morning starts. You put the red wire, this is all there is to it, onto the positive, and then you put the black wire onto the negative. And the first thing it said when it came up, and I don't know if you noticed that, I'll do it again, CCA, cold cranking amps. Now this particular battery has written on the top how many cold cranking amps it's got. It's really how powerful the battery is, and you simply use the arrows here to match what's on the battery you're testing. Now really this battery should be at 12.5 volts minimum for me to be able to test this, but I'm going to show you this afternoon anyway. If you want to see how many volts are in it, you push the V button, but for now our battery says on the top here it's a 700 CCA, so we're going to go up to 700. Now we'll push V for voltage and we're showing 11.6 volts, so it's kind of a handy gadget for that. Now when I put the test button on this and put the load on it, you don't simply got three choices. If it comes up X, it's a bad battery, it can't handle the power. If it comes up with a low button, then it's simple again, it tells you the battery needs charging, and I suspect that's what will happen with this. And if the green light comes on, we're good to go. So let's see what happens. It confirms that it's 700 cold cranking amps, biddly biddly biddly, and it came up low, which is what I thought it would be. Now later this afternoon I'll put this thing on charge and we'll see how it does when it's been charged up for a while. Here we are again. Okay. I thought this would be an opportunity just to show you how to actually use the battery chargers that we have in our garages. This is a professional level one, not one of the little ones you get from Sears or whatever. I'm going to show you this one first of all and how it works. This one's called a Schumacher. Very similar kind of deal, sold in O'Reilly's and various other places. It's kind of big. It has a piece of rubber on the top here to put the wires on so they don't short out when the machine's switched on. Obviously the red one goes on the plus side of the battery. There's the plus side. Red, plus, dangerous. Well, potentially dangerous. Here's the ground, and it goes to the minus side of the battery. Oh, and it goes to the minus side of the battery. Hook it up there. Now on here we've got an amp meter and a voltmeter. We've got the amount of volts that you want it to be at. So I turn this for now 40 amps and just switch on the timer. The charge time is just like an egg timer at home. I'm going to give it 40 amps, going to throw a lot into it for the time being and put it on 40 amps. Oh, it's on 6 volt, look. Oops. So you have to pay attention. This has to be on 12 volts. There's one or two others. 12 volt 40 amp. That one's 20 amp. And that one's 40 amp. There's a couple of others on the bottom here. 12 volt 225 amp. This is if your battery is partly dead and you can actually start it up. This particular voltmeter doesn't show very much. It shows it's broken, I think. Normally when these work they'll show around about 12 volts, 12 and a half, however many this has got in. The amperage basically shows you how much is being sucked into the battery and how dead the battery is. At the moment this one needs to be on charge for around about half an hour. When I've finished, after half an hour, I've got 30 minutes on here as you can see. What I'll do is I'll turn the switch down to 2 amps and I'll let it charge with a trickle. That's what they call a trickle charge. A very small amount of voltage going in at a time. The only thing I would say about these, having this in the house, and I've only got it in here really to show you, when this video is done I'm going to actually put it outside the door with an extension cord and charge it outside, because batteries put out pure hydrogen. Even these sealed ones put out a little bit. These other old batteries where you can take the tops off and you can get to the acid inside them, they have a tendency to put out quite a lot of hydrogen, and that makes everything flammable and it stinks. And if you've got a mum or a wife or somebody, they don't like it around the house. So when this has been charging for a little while and get it up to 12 volts, I'll do the next part of the video. Okay, here's just showing you the battery charger while it's on charge on this car battery. Now this is actually the one off my beach buggy, and it had dropped down to around about 10 volts through just sitting around. And I tend to keep my batteries indoors from vehicles that don't actually run all the time. I want to just show you this. The amp meter on this charger is now working. I had to fiddle around with it while no one was really looking. And it shows 20 amps. Now 20 amps is what the battery is sucking in. It's quite literally drawing it in. If the battery was completely charged up, it would be pulling in nothing. Because if you think of, as I said before, the battery actually being a bucket that's filled with water, and it's actually a battery that's filled with electricity, it's pretty empty at the moment. It's about half full, that's what it's saying. How deadly accurate this is really not that accurate. The amperage is showing you how many amps you're supposed to be putting into it. It's not working quite so well. It says that it's kind of weak at the moment, but the main one you need to concern yourself with is the amperage. It's quite literally sucking a lot in. I'm going to leave it on charge for about half an hour, and then I'll show you it again when it's fully charged, and then we'll do the drop test on it to test the integrity of the battery. Okay, here we go. We're now going to use the PBT 100 to test this battery. Put it on the minus side, put the plus on the plus side. Now this one is actually charged up. This is a 700, so we're going to go up to 700. This is the cranking amps when it's cold. We'll check the voltage, 13.08. That's a pretty good voltage. It's well and truly up there. So we're going to test it. Here we go. Confirming it's a 700. Bippity bippity bip. And it says it's a good battery. Awesome, huh? There we go. Now there are a few more other ways of actually testing batteries. One is to use the old-fashioned toaster. I'll see if I can show you a picture of one up in this video in a second. Cool. Going to be testing one or two other batteries around here as well today. I'm having a bit of a battery day. There will be a quiz on batteries and battery chargers. Quick review for you. The battery charger itself has various settings on it, on the amps and also on the volts. Seems like the more the needle is up, the more the battery is sucking in. So if you put a battery on that you suspect is fully charged, you should most definitely, if it's at 0, not bother. Shouldn't need it. But if it's putting in 30, then you know it's very dead and it will take a while to charge up. The amperage and the voltmeter just basically gives you an idea of how much is in the battery. For some reason this voltmeter is not working. On the control, on the volts and amp selectors, there's the off position obviously. This particular one does 6 volts 40 amps. Some motorcycles like dirt bikes used to be 6 volt, and some of the old-fashioned cars like the Model A's and Model T's and some of the real old cars were 6 volt, and that would be a quick charge up for one of those. The next section on here is 12 volt 2 amps, so that would be kind of a trickle charge, putting a tiny amount in and gradually filling the battery up so we don't lose any, and it's totally awesome. The next section on here is 12 volts 20 amps. That's around about halfway between the most it'll put in, but it's also 6 volt 125 amps start. So it would be, so if your battery was dead on your old 6 volt Ford or 6 volt VW or whatever, you could jump start it. Kind of a cool idea. 12 volt 40 amp, that would be quickly get it charged up as quick as you can, get it out the door. 12 volt 225 amp start, that would be for starting a battery that's half dead and won't crank very well. And then there's the off position. This side is quite literally an egg timer. Off position, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 70, 120, or you can take it all the way around and there's a little, listen, click, and it goes over to hold. Now they're all kind of like this, these industrial battery chargers. I recommend that you buy one and keep it in your garage because it will help you out a lot during the winter time, especially if you don't have a brand new car. Mine's a little dusty. But that's it for battery chargers.